Aloha and welcome to Making Love Visible. My name is June Dillinger and I am your host today. I'm so glad that you have joined me. It's good to have you here, and you will find out why you are here while you are watching, because today I have a really special guest. This program used to be called It's All About Love. And in the last couple of years, I felt like I needed to up-level a little bit, because while it's all about love, it's how do we make love visible in our world today? And especially here in Hawaii, we know that word aloha is a state statute, but how often are we actually behaving or being and having that activity of making love visible? So today, I have a guest whose name is Chip Phelps. And I'd like to introduce you to Chip. Chip has been a longtime friend of mine, and he has a company called Leverage Leadership, and we're getting ready to find more about that. Welcome, Chip.
Great. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah.
Good to see you, June.
I've been thinking about how you and I first met, and of course it's been years. I remember Chip because I saw him at Unity Church of Hawaii in the sanctuary, and I thought to myself, that's a good-looking man. I wonder if he's single. Did I ever tell you that?
No.
Anyway, that was my first thought when I first saw you. And
No.
Who knew that we'd become the friends that we are today, and all that's transpired. And I chose Chip to be a guest today because his business is called Leverage Leadership. And he is also an expert in grief and grief counseling. And his background expands very broadly. So I'd like you to first share a little bit about both, a little smidge about both, and I'll interject with some questions.
Okay, great. Well, I've been around and in through and up through leadership in a variety of different locations most of my life. And as an example, I've been a Chamber of Commerce president at one point. I've also been involved in leadership in terms of what the deans at the university wanted in a business management setting, where they wanted some courses taught on leadership, which I designed. I co-designed a course called Leadership with Integrity, which really came down to a tripod, so to speak, of trust, intimacy, and ethics in leadership. And so it was aimed at businesses and the leaders that were coming back to school, midlife returners to college, were meeting with us, and I co-led that with another very sharp woman, Claudia Darvisher, in Portland, Oregon. And we taught that for 10 years. There was that much demand for it.
That was trust,
intimacy
and
leadership and ethics.
And ethics. So
ethics.
Could you imagine a leadership program today used about trust, intimacy, and ethics? How valuable that would. Oh, it's a whole bunch of tongue twisters. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, and so that's the company side of who I am. The grief work that I do is across more than 40 different types of human loss, for which there's a lot of sources, and some of them are not real obvious. For example, I've done my own work on the loss of childhood, when I was put in a position of being an adult too early in life. And so those kinds of losses are very real as well, and they're not always so obvious to people. The pet losses, the divorces, the death of a spouse, loss of a home, are all different sources of loss. But the positive side of that is a promotion can be a loss too, because all of a sudden you're changing neighborhoods, typically you're changing friends, you're expected to behave differently than you've behaved over the last few years. Grief being defined as a loss of a familiar pattern. And that familiar pattern includes the good stuff that happens to us as well, not just the negatives. So my work here in the islands has been wrapped around both ends of that scale, and I love it. So.
Well, definitely, because there's a balance with leveraging, well, for me, leveraging the leadership of self for myself,
Right.
and how am I dealing or addressing or looking at all of those things that I carry on my back or on my sleeve or on my heart or in my head or in my chest or in my na'au or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Or like I keep stubbing my toe because why? You know, what are these things? And so the work that you do and the value that you bring is incredible. I want you to talk a little bit about how you blend those two in your business environment and how that supports this dynamic of making love visible.
Well, thank you for that. Let me just say that the basis for intimacy starts with ourselves. So your comments about yourself are right on the point, that until we get ourselves figured out mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially, and we get stabilized in those areas, we tend not to be that effective with other people because we're wound up in our own stuff. So the way that they come together, though, and the way that I've envisioned them over the years is there's a lot of leaders that go through divorces, as an example, that are in companies. And what a lot of people don't understand about grief is it doesn't matter which continent you're on, which culture you're out of. It's the same for everybody in terms of the responses that we have to it. Three major things. One is confusion. Can you imagine a chief executive officer who just came through her divorce, looking at a ledger of millions of dollars and being confused? And what that can mean for a business? Can you imagine somebody at the front line of a business that's wound up in the production system, that's confused, that's isolating, just like the CEO would do, and also in some level of depression where they're not paying attention to business? I went through this at 19. I was in an industrial logging accident, and it was over a loss of a relationship, and I was totally distracted when I got hurt. So it's from experience that I know, and from research experience that we know people do these kinds of things where they get distracted. And that's a huge piece of leadership. If you're distracted, you're not doing the job of leading your people and setting good standards for them and so on and so forth. So it's very, very connected in that capacity. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, because that is how love is made visible, by taking care of yourself and being aware of those things that are occurring in order to be the leader that one needs to be. And that's why great leaders are great leaders, because they've taken care of all of that. It reminded me for just a moment of, well, Chip, you know this, I've been single for a long time.
Sure.
Well, I've had lots of boyfriends. I've done a lot of dating, and some a couple longer than others, maybe a couple years, but still yet nothing that really was the landing piece to where I needed to be for me. So I had to take out a lot of trash, if you will. I had to really be mindful of the choices and say no here and no there, and not be concerned about hurting someone else's feelings, yet speaking from my own truth.
Right.
And so now I'm in a relationship, as you know, that's healthy, it's mindful, it's connected, it's intense, it's worth it, it's meaty, it's juicy, it's not always easy, yet there's an awareness around it that has made this piece of my life more full than it's ever been.
Right.
Even though I had a 20-year marriage, even though I've had lots of in-between relationships, everything builds. And if you're not willing to release that or grieve it properly, you can't find success in leading yourself into anything. So now, I used to say all the time, it's about love and money. Well, I've changed it now because I got the love thing fairly secure. Now I'm working on the money part. So now it's about money and love. And let's see what I can create next, where I have something that I am clear about in my actions and how I'm managing myself in order to build around that.
Right.
And so with what you teach in leveraged leadership, I want to hear more about that and what you've done in the community here in Honolulu.
Great. So some of the trainings that I've been involved in begin with dealing with very difficult people in the workforce. And the contribution that's important there has landed in the middle of both the civilian sector and the private or the military sector, where there's issues about how do we really reach across, because once we get ourselves pretty much figured out, not that we ever fully know ourselves. We still have to be able to reach across the aisle to somebody and pull them toward us. And that's what makes relationships really work, is we're willing to reach over and say, hey, you know what, I need help with my money situation, or I need help with understanding why you're emotionally bent right now, or you're excited, whatever it might be. And I think part of it is that the leadership that we are responsible for is to deliver courses and coursework that keep people consciously involved with the business of leading and consciously connected to what is it that I'm contributing to my business, to the business of my home, to the business of my community, to the business of my church relationships if I maintain one. What is it that I need to do to make that effective? And I believe that those are power skills. Without those skills, we don't stay in businesses, we don't stay in marriages, we don't stay in a community. It's easy to just let things go and not deal with it.
Yes.
And bury our heads and say, you know what, I can't do it. So.
And I know I'm absolutely sure I took the Myers-Briggs with you.
Yes.
ENFP, in case you haven't figured that one out, in case you know about it. And you're an expert in this, and I'm sure that I took that with you at the Chamber of Commerce, or maybe at another workshop, but I am sure that I took it with you, Chip. I could probably dig back up the paperwork. So that, in conjunction with something new that you've started working with, are the heart cards.
Right.
And I've talked about that in a previous show, and how to use that with respect to DEIB, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And so all of those, your business must be on fire, because people need to figure out how to get over their crap, and not just crap, but their heartfelt, long-held things that have happened in their life, from 50-year relationships or even friendships that have dissolved, to really discovering how to make that connection.
Right. And in those areas where we have differences and we have needs for equity and inclusion, one way to do that is to be sure that you're offering a curriculum of training that's instilled not on a one-day basis, but on an ongoing basis, so that people can come back to the topic and they can get the coaching that they need in order to stay on point with how do I become a better team member in my business, or in my marriage, or with my son and daughter, or relatives, whatever it might be. This whole concept that I love in Hawaii of ohana is like, whoo, that's big.
It's a beautiful word.
And it cuts across a lot of people very closely connected throughout the islands. How many times have we all tripped over relatives that are related to people that we know? So I love that. But I also love the fact that we have the love of the Hawaiian culture here to deal with. We need to continue to support and encourage Hawaiian folks to come out and be all they can be. And they're on the way. Those folks are very sharp. They're coming around. And they are part of the whole scene of equity, particularly here in the islands where they were originated here. Yes. So the love of their culture is really critical to me. And being married to a part Hawaiian, that's important to me also, for a whole other reason.
You probably get a dose of that on a daily basis.
You better believe it.
Yeah, her ethnic diversity is right there in the house, 24/7.
Right. That Hapa stuff goes a long way.
Oh, she's a gem, that lady.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, so what kind of projects are you working on now that you're bringing forward and have rolling around in that beautiful mind of yours?
Thank you for asking. One of the things that I'm currently pursuing is the change in mindset that comes out of things like the Myers-Briggs in the past and other instruments that are out there that enable us to get to more of the mindset that people are stayed in, and help them to dissolve it to some extent over time, so that what they contribute to the business is they contribute productivity to the bottom line. And that's not the only thing, but they also contribute connection to other people, which is part of the motivation for why people and teams are so effective. Having worked with teams during Desert Storm 1, I saw a lot of people that were infected by people who could really connect with them and understand, well, you're an engineer, but I'm not. But I want to understand what the numbers mean to you and why you think the way you think. And once I understand that, I can make a better contribution to you. And you talk about lighting each other up, they can do it. I've seen teams, whether it's 4 or 5 or it's 10 or 15. At one point we had 135 people in one room working teams, just to be sure that we could take advantage of the morale and the surfing that goes on with the synergy that's in that. And I have yet to see a team fail, to be honest with you. If it fails, it's usually cut off because money or something like that. But on my regime, I had 17 teams that operated, and we were getting a 10-to-1 return, the highest you could get in the country.
Wow.
The average at that time during the 80s was a 5-to-1 return for every hour that I put you in a chair and mined the gold in your mind, your brilliance, and brought you into that team. We get a 5-to-1 return nationally. This particular team had a 10-to-1 return because they were so motivated, they were so connected with each other and respectful of each other's work, which, by the way, goes right back to intimacy and connection. I fill my buckets up, but I fill your buckets up. You fill my buckets up, I fill my buckets up.
There's a space, though, of fear and safety that come into that.
Right.
A fear of, am I enough? Will I be accepted? Am I smart enough? Do I have this? Do I have that? Do I have what it takes? Will I fit in? And how do you address those things in group dynamics?
That's a great question, and it's a fundamental question. I'll give you an example from experience. In that same period of time, I was doing work with a supervisor who wanted to start a self-directed work team, which is she wanted to step back once we got the team put together and be sure that they could come together. The very basic, the very first step you have to look at is, how do we communicate? How do I tell you when things are going good for me and when they're not? And how do I set up that boundary you were talking about earlier about, hey, you know what, you're laying your paintbrush down here and it's causing problems for me to be able to do this job. Could you please do X, Y, Z? In other words, how do we give feedback to each other, which typically, internationally, managers don't do. It's as high as 85%.
Wow.
That managers are not giving feedback to their people. So one of the ways we have to get people started is to communicate. Once we know how to communicate, a lot of it's taken care of because those teams are hand-picked. You just don't throw a group of people together if you want an effective team, particularly a self-directed work team. So what happens for them is their expertise comes in, and they all know that they're an expert in a particular area, and they know why they were picked to be in that particular team, so that they are immediately an expert in terms of what they know and their experience. So it takes shaping. Not every team starts up the same way, but when I'm in charge of it, we're going to do communication early on, and we're going to get that down pat. And that includes the respect the team has to have to be left alone by management, because they will report to management constantly in the style that I use.
For a check-in.
Yeah, for check-ins.
Something that just passed my mind was the word feedback.
Yeah.
I remember, well, particularly from Toastmasters, in practicing learning to speak, was the word evaluation, and having an evaluation. And let me share some feedback with you versus the word criticism.
Right.
Critique is a little softer form, although criticism has that scratchy, like something's wrong or I'm going to get basted or beat up. And feedback is a much more gentle, loving approach that, at least I know for myself, I can welcome feedback, especially when it's shared in a way that I can hear.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you can listen to it, and you can begin to walk away with an idea of, maybe I can make some changes and shifts. And that is making love visible. When we step up to that opportunity and we don't cower because we don't know how to be assertive, part of the communication process is learning to say it in a way that people can hear it, but beyond that, that they can begin to embody it and come back and say, you know what, you were right. I have to make that change. And I appreciate you letting me know about that. What's next?
Yeah, let's get on to the next part.
Yeah,
this is exciting. This is good. This is good juice.
Right. And it's not all rah, 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 but it's genuine.
Yeah.
It's genuine. It's connection, filling up somebody else's buckets with the truth. The truth is, I needed the feedback. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a little dog leg to the right at the moment. I have a thank you for you, Chip.
Oh.
Let's see. In the fall of 2018, Chip gave me a telephone call. And he said, Junebug, I need to speak with you. I think I've got something for you. And I went, oh, no. I'm like, look, I'm busy trying to write a book called The Benefit of the X, Making Love Visible When Everything Changes.
That's right.
I've got a destination wedding business. I'm busy. What? And he's like, nope, you are the lady of love. We need to meet. So I go down to, it was at the pier.
Nico's, yeah.
Nico's at the pier. And he says, so look, your last guest was J.R. Coleman. And you know J.R. And I did. I knew J.R. quite well. And J.R. was the original creator of the Heart Card deck. And I'd known him for years. And we were good friends. And when J.R. passed away, he bequeathed the deck of cards to Chip. And Chip was ready to sign them off to me. And you have changed my life.
Wow.
You have made love visible through me. He has been an incredible gift because through Chip's willingness to see me for who I am, he believed that I could be the carrier of this gift for Heart Cards. And actually, he was the one that named the business Heart Cards Global. I don't know if you remember when we were sitting on my lanai and I said we need to come up with an official name. Right. So it's heartcardsglobal.com. And as one of the board members and founding gift, like you, so who knew this attractive man sitting in the back of Unity would show up in my life today as my guest here on Making Love Visible. And it's been really huge. You've made a big difference for me in sticking to it.
Thank you for your compliment, but I want to be sure that we co-share it because you brought a lot of love to the party and made it visible in upgrading everything you touched. Everything. And that makes a huge difference when people participate with us in our meetings because it's professional and they trust it, and that's the first step. You've got to be able to trust what's coming at you. And boy, this looks really trustworthy. And the way we speak to each other and the way we speak in the Heart Card meetings is all about intimacy. It's about connection so that people can build the trust and they know that ethically we're in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing for the right reasons for the right people.
He's my backbone. What can I say? You have stood up for the challenge and participated in the growth in ways that I can check in with you regularly. And I have this amazing man who knows about grief and leadership all in one breath. And you keep me grounded in where I need to be in my life in more ways than one.
I'd like to, if I could, share Napoleon Hill's book on the keys to success, the 17 principles of it. The reason I'm sharing this is I'm talking about intimacy here with you. And this is about as intimate as you can get on a self-connected basis, where daily I have a game I play at my office where I ask the women and the guys, have you read your sentence today out of this book? And when you open this book on my case, it's full of ink all the way through it.
Oh my gosh.
So I have to reach into myself daily.
Can you zoom in and see this if I flip the pages? You ready? Can you see all the ink marks in this book? This is amazing, Chip. Wow.
And that's a road map that I'm getting ready to send to one of my clients in New York who just landed a job there, who's now out of touch with the Hawaiian community. She's Hawaiian, and she needs to have a place she can go without me at 2 o'clock in the morning New York time to say, hey, what do I need to work on next? Where do I need to go? Where am I where am I filling my own buckets up? So I recommend Napoleon Hill's 17 Keys to Success, if you can get your hands on it. They're all principles.
Beautiful. So I'm just noticing we only have 2 minutes left.
Sure.
Time goes by so fast.
I know.
Have I missed anything that is like profoundly has to be said in this moment?
I don't think so, June. I think that I appreciate the opportunity to express the love and to show the love that we can put into the community, whether it's grief resolution or it's training and development for feedback or for whatever the training might be, communication or otherwise. And it doesn't have to be in a business, certainly, but we enjoy it at our place because it is business and we can live it daily. Thank you.
That's
so
beautiful.
much.
If you are questioning how to live in this space daily, I mean, you may be even thinking, could we do it once a month or once a year? I'm not sure where you're at in your business or your family or in your life. And if you are thinking more about the depth of how could you really get connected? Do you folks remember, and Chip, you may remember this, there was the word pivot during the pandemic. Yeah. It was pivot here, pivot there. We're pivoting, we're pivoting, we're pivoting.
Yeah.
The acronym that's popular today is DEI and DEIB. I'll say it again. D, diversity, E, equity, I, inclusion, and B, belonging. And if you are not feeling that diversity, equity, inclusion, and especially belonging, I would invite you to take a look at you first, because there's something rolling around in you that wants more. Excuse me. That wants to feel that aliveness and awareness and just awake and on fire for your life, because you're here for a reason and only you know that unless you're willing to share it.
Right.
So I'm asking you to lean in, be in touch with Chip, feel free to reach out to me and make some love visible today. You were here for a reason and I hope you discovered what it was. Thanks for joining us on Making Love Visible. See you next time.